Welcome to this recording of Model-Driven Power Apps UI testing. Today we're going to talk about running test suites locally, so running them and reviewing their best practices. My name is Ali Yousefi, and this was recorded in August of 2023. All right, so first I'd like to cover, why is this important? Why are we, watching this video today? I know that testing isn't most certainly the most sexiest thing out there, but it is very important. You can see I've listed a few of the qualities that I think testing brings to your ALM, to your development, to overall your health of your platform and your application. Some of these here include speed and preparation, right? So having being able to know when defects are happening as soon as possible, setting up the initial feedback loop using unit testing, being well prepared, right? Understanding that for every change, I have a test that's associated with that. So I think it's advantageous to write a test for these changes you're making, for each, actually have one for each, so that now we can have a nice list of tests for regressions. Now, obviously, we don't need to write tests for things that aren't needed, and we definitely don't want to run tests that are going to give us things like false positives or constantly failing. So it's important to also revisit the test you're writing and make sure they're actually relevant to you. Consistency, right? So when you test something, you're sort of providing yourself a consistency, right? When I build a test for a piece of code, I'm writing towards maybe like a test-driven development. So I'm writing towards the understanding that I'm going to build something that should react the same way with the same test parameters. So I have consistency. I'm writing things in a modular approach, and it should make things more reliable as well. Same quality, right? So if we're already talking consistency, reliability, I think quality just falls hand in hand with that. So having tests obviously promotes quality, and that's something that everybody can be an ambassador for, from the business to developers, project managers, whatever it would be, all can be quality ambassadors, wear that hat. And it should instill confidence, right? These tests should make you, feel that you've sort of covered your bases, that you've come prepared, your platform is reliable, you have, these quality check boxes. So you should feel confident once you've written your test that you've covered your bases. All right, so for this recording, we're going to mainly focus on the test tools that are available, really focusing on defining the metadata and criteria to help build our test suites and test plans, and then executing locally and reviewing the test results from our Visual Studio testing. But before I begin, again, I have to go back to why we're doing this. We're connecting our business and our developers. We're providing a good feedback loop. Quality is vital. Quality is vital. Software, whatever it is. In testing can be anything. It can be automated, it can be manual, exploratory, whatever that is. These are very important techniques for us, making sure that we're ensuring quality of our application. Everybody on the team owns quality. Whatever role you have, hat you wear, everybody has quality. It should be top of mind when you're designing, testing, advocating, whatever. So everybody wears that hat. You can see here developers, managers, project owners, advocates, etc. Teams, they need access to tooling that allows them to communicate and collaborate in a well-known space where we all speak a similar language. This could be the visuals, right? So we're talking Kanban boards, whiteboards, to maybe more complex like test plans with different test runs and test cases and multiple steps with different data sources and all sorts of things. But to think about when you're as a developer, you're working with the business, or the business working with the developer, what's that communication going to look like? How can you work together to bring feedback loops front and center? Because that's what's going to ensure quality, is continuous feedback from testing and from the business. All right, so getting into some of the test tools we have for model-driven apps, we'll use Visual Studio testing, VS Test. The pros of that, it works on workstation servers and containers, works in most ALM CI/CD tools. So if you're working with GitHub, you're working with Azure DevOps, they all have the VS test piece to it. Con, I mean, it is mostly pro dev, relies on interpreters for working with code and working with different packages and EXEs for testing and so on. The tool we'll be using for browser automation will be based off of known frameworks such as Selenium or Playwright. The pros of it is that it's open source, has a robust community, works with behavior-driven development, so it has compatibility with that. Again, works on the workstation servers and containers, and will work on the CI/CD tools. Again, one of the cons of it is it's mainly pro dev. We'll look forward to a future video that will look at sort of a low code or a way to empower the business to be able to write tests that wouldn't necessarily have to learn a programming language. Another option is third party. There's some third party tools out there. They provide ease of use, right? Most of them will have something like either a UI or have some sort of building block off of it, and they'll probably have their own support available with that. Con is a cost. There's licensing associated with most things. So just keep in mind, when you're choosing which tools, if it's going to be something that's open source, such as the tool we'll be using today, which is Easy Repro, or if you want to go with a third party, such as like LeapWork, for instance, and what's the advantages and disadvantages to both of those. All right, let's hop into a demo showing how we're going to actually use one of those automation tools. This one's Easy Repro. We're going to demo cloning Easy Repro. Okay, in this point, I'm going to start a series of demos, hopefully going one by one. This first demo is going to clone Easy Repro from GitHub locally. Now, you may have already done this in the past. You may have already got a copy of it. You may have made some changes. What we're going to show here is how you can clone the latest changes from, in our case, the main branch, which is the develop branch. So we're going to show how you can clone and get the latest. Now, if you've made changes to the source code, you may need to work to merge those. But for this one here, we're just going to simply show what I would consider a good practice, which is to clone Easy Repro as it is, and then as we go into the other demos, we'll show how to build on top of it. So let me go ahead and bring Easy Repro up. So we have Easy Repro, and we have the develop branch. So I have a code button here. I'm going to click this button and hit copy. This is how I tend to do it. Now you can go other ways with it, but I open up PowerShell because I have Git already on my machine. Let me make this smaller here. There we go. And I type in git clone. What we have. This will clone Easy Repro, a nice folder here. So now I've brought this in. I now have a solution I can open up. And have a nice clean slate to work with Easy Repro. What I would recommend at this point, before we start looking at bringing in our custom tests that we want to run, is just make sure you can build Easy Repro. So, building all of these as well as making sure our dependencies are up to date. So in this case here, I know for a fact that the sample code here uses the Chrome browser NuGet package. Now for our tests, we won't be using this because this just show us how to build tests. So if you need to learn how to build test, I'd recommend looking at this as well as other videos that I've produced through the years that show how to work with the different objects and how to build a test. What we're really focused on for today is the API.UCI project and the browser project. These will be the ones that we'll be building as assemblies, and we'll be able to reference those in our test, our existing test we have, as well as we can show how to bring in, say, our test as its own sort of unit test project within here. So for now, what I'd recommend is simply right-clicking and hitting Build Solution, just making sure everything builds as expected. And we had one that's failed. We're missing the Selenium Chrome driver from the sample project. So for here, what I tend to do is go into Properties, and you can choose what you want to do, if you want to, how you want to build a certain one, if you want to build all of them or what. The easiest thing to do right here is see Build. You can just simply say, oh, I don't really want to. And we should work this way. And these are all three up to date and one skipped. If you needed to go update that Chrome driver package, that was preferred method. Right click on the project, go to Manage NuGet Packages, go to Updates, find the Chrome driver one, see 114, 116, hit Update. Okay, you'll see down here, it'll try updating here. And from there, we would go try to build these and so on, right? So if you do get an error here, this one's saying that there's a missing file from the Chrome driver targets, you'll want to do this NuGet package restore. You can do a restore as well. But for now, for what you have for your other project, you should be good. So let's go to the next demo. Okay, so we've seen how we can clone Easy Repro. Let's move into working with tests that we may already have or tests that we don't have that we're going to define. So what I would want to point out here is metadata and criteria, sort of attributes that you can add to your test for clarity. You're actually already using some of this now with the test method, test class, and so on. But there's additional ones here you'll see, like test category, priority, test properties, who's the owner of it, what team is it aligned to, test cleanup. There's all sorts of different attributes here. So you see the description, build on each one of these rows that we have. Take a minute to review that. In the demo that we have a little bit later, we'll go through most of these that you see on the list here. All right, as we start working with defining criteria, what you'll really see how it shines is with something called Visual Studio Test Explorer. That lets you know how to, or shows you how to look at different tests, sorting them by various attributes, state, for instance, are they running successfully or not? So you can see down here the number of total tests we have, number of failed tests, passed, failed, not run, etc. It'll help us quickly debug and diagnose. It'll show us the list of tests. We can right click or run test and see which ones are failing, rerun those quickly, adjust the test if we need to, whatever it is. And we also look at performance of the test, how long did it run, is there certain steps that are happening in the test that are taking longer than normal. The neat part about it is it'll let us build test playlist, and we'll see that in the upcoming demo. We'll build test playlists based on attributes that are pertinent to what we're trying to achieve. If that's building playlists based on iterations or type of test, end-to-end testing, sit testing, whatever that might be. It also lets us define logging and set up, where we're going to set up the test sort of directory where all of our artifacts will end up listing. There's also other buttons you can see, like repeat the last test run certain tests, like for instance, run only the failed test. You can see that button here. So there's some really good advantages of using Test Explorer. So let's get into a demo of that now. And so in this demo, we're going to show how to add attributes and define a test suite to Visual Studio Test. Okay, in this example, we're going to show how to add metadata to test, what sort of metadata options we have in building a test suite that can be saved and reused as we look to replay test. So first, before we get into the test suite, let's talk about decorating our test, right? In fact, you've already been doing part of this just to run test. So for instance, in here, I have a custom my unit test, right, for Contoso Coffee, right? My organization runs model-driven app UI test, leveraging Easy Repro. So we have our own unit test. No references to Easy Repro at all here, nothing going on. And we have my different test. You've already been using some decorations by doing things such as defining test class, defining and initializing constructors, right? So setting up what I'm going to do before I run this particular class that I have, this create booking class. You've been adding test method. So that's helped you. That helps the unit testing sort of interpreter understand which test you have, so that you can do things like debug or run test. What you see on this one is test category project operations, and that's something that we've added to help identify which model app is this for, or which team is this for, or what iteration is this for, what's the purpose of this test. Now, that doesn't mean you should sort of not work on building meaningful test names. That's one of the highest things I would say that you could do, is to work on the test name to describe what it should do. But test categories can also help there. Where that helps is actually at the top on the toolbar, there is a button called Test. You can actually click on Test and see Test Explored. Sometimes that's docked, sometimes it's not. You can see in mine, I have different tests here. And I can do, certain things. I can just look at the test, or I can say filter or group them by certain things. Maybe I want to group them by, let's see, a trait that they have. Well, none of them really have maybe traits. What about categories? Well, I don't see categories per se. So that's going to be more of something you would use for when you're running VS test through the through a CLI, for instance, right? So test category helps with categorizing the test. Class initialization is a one-time triggered method before the test case starts. You can also set up things such as priority. So if I want to do priority, I can say, you know what, maybe I got to do one that creates bookable resources before I go read or update them. I could do a priority of 0. Maybe save this. Let's see, does it change anything here? No, I don't see that per se, but I have different options. I can do duration and state and so on. But you can set up priority and it'll actually run these in the order that it should be. And you can also do other ones such as test property. So I can do a string and value. So I can say something like, maybe what iteration this is. Something, right? Again, going here, I can do certain things like, traits and stuff, right? So like this one has project ops as the trait. So this test category was this trait. If you notice, I have one that says no trait is here, but I have these that do have traits. What about adding some other items here, right? So we said project, namespace class. I believe we should also be able to see other fields here if we want to mess with that. So looking at things like the state of it, right? So state would be like it hasn't been run, and if you want to be successful or failed, you can see these all here. I can again do by something like traits, and add in maybe even additional columns here. If I want to add additional ones, I can do that as well. Say something on project operations, maybe even do bookable resource. So this is where you can start adding more information. So if you want to, when you want to run tests and you want to signify which ones they are, this is one option you can do by test category. Obviously, you can do by fully qualified namespace, things like that. But you can see here how I can filter and so on. If I want to start building out playlist, I can hold down the control key, for instance. Maybe do this, maybe add to a new playlist. So I right-clicked, I held down the control key, hit right-click and said add to playlist, add new. And now you can see I have a new window here. And I can just run it, or if I want, I can, edit it or save it. I want to save it. I can save it as, maybe I saved it as creating project and bookable resources. And so now I have a playlist that I can use. I can do tests, test suites and so on off of that. So I can simply just, when I want a playlist from now on, I have this one here, and I can create multiples as we look to start building out things like regression suites and so on. So on the next demo, we'll show how we can combine these together, and then we'll wrap with executing and looking at some of the results. Okay, that's a great demo. Now the next one we're going to go into, we're actually going to go right into it. We're going to open Easy Repro side by side with the existing test. So we've cloned Easy Repro, we've had some tests. How do we combine these together so that we are able to merge them, work with the latest version of Easy Repro, and begin to start executing our test? Okay, for this demo, we're going to show how we've already cloned Easy Repro down. We've already shown how we can sort of decorate test to have attributes, traits, right? So that we can search by those traits, use those traits within our test suites. But for now, we're going to take those tests and we are going to now bring them into our existing Easy Repro. So this is the same one we cloned earlier. Nothing new. In this case here, you can go about it different ways. I'm going to actually just add the existing project. So this would be, I have a project already here. Here, this unit test for Contoso copy, right? So they're completely separated. So I'm going to bring in this project that has stuff regarding like project ops, right? So it's got project op test, things like create lead, resources, etc. It's got the same test settings, all of that good stuff. Yep, and so here you'll see the run settings file. Most likely, if you've already run these tests, you've set all these up. So you'll have, fill these in, bring that in as part of that project, and you should be good to go. And in that case, what you would do now is you want to build these and reference them. So first thing I can do is attempt to build everything. And see that I've succeeded. One new one, which was the unit test I brought in. And there was 3 up to date. I'm skipping the sample one. So what I can do now is right click on references, click add reference, and then bring in 3 references here. API, API.uci, and browser. So I'm going to bring those in, and you'll see now these are here. So when you first brought in your project, if you would have done something like create lead, none of this stuff would have been lit up, right? So the web client, etc., right? So to show, I actually can remove these. This is sort of what it would look like. So you'd have a bunch of errors show up, 10 different, 222 errors. I mean, all sorts of stuff. But just bring these in like you would before. And they'll show up. Again, you can build the unit test. Make sure you update your NuGet package, because this will be how you run your test. So what have you done here? What you've done is you've now cloned the latest from Easy Repro. You've built the latest from Easy Repro, and now you've brought your unit test into Easy Repro. So this is where the decoupling of the unit testing out of, say, this sample, right? So I've seen many organizations who will just take this sample and just change it, add the name of their company, and just build off of it. I would highly recommend creating your own custom unit test like we've shown, adding in your own test, and then, having that separate. So when you clone in, if I were to say clone a newer version of Easy Repro, say a fix comes out, when I clone this down, I won't have to worry about any sort of overwriting or any merging, because I'm not making changes to Easy Repro down here. I'm only changing my unit test and building what I need. So if there is a need to change Easy Repro, that's where you would say fork Easy Repro, make the change, and submit it back as a PR. There's videos for that. There's videos for working with browsers to make sure it's up to date. And there's, again, videos of showing how to set the configuration, how to build tests. So there's many different videos that I'll link to that you'll see above, as well as in the references below. All right, so we're set up. Let's dive into the final demo today. We're going to execute some tests. We're going to review the results locally in Visual Studio, looking for things to help us when we are debugging our tests. So writing log statements, capturing exception messages, stack traces, taking screenshots and adding those as artifacts to our test context. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Okay, for this final demo, what we're going to do is bring all of this together. So we've started with, cloning Easy Repro locally. We've seen how we can build our own test or decorate our test with attributes, create playlists so we can run these tests. We've seen how we can bring those tests within our Easy Repro that's been cloned. Very nice right here. And finally, we're going to show how to run these. So again, hitting the test button at the top, we can open up Test Explorer. We open up Test Explorer, you'll see different buttons at the top. One you can hit is Open Playlist File. Now I already have the file here, but if not, you can open Playlist File and look for .playlist wherever it may be. And so in my case, I'll click it. You'll see it open up a new one. Now I've run this in the past, so you're seeing some red. But if you haven't run it, it may show, not run, something like that. So an easy thing you can just simply do is once you have your playlist, is just hit run, and you'll have it run, and you can see what's going on. It'll start spinning, showing that each one here like a clock showing that it's going to run, and then it'll have a spinner running here. So we'll go ahead and let this finish up and look at the results of it. Actually, while that's going on, let's take a look at a test here, because adding in some of this I think is going to be helpful. So this is in the Easy Repro code if you don't already have it, but I'd recommend adding in some this is a screenshot, adding it to the text context. And in here we have adding tracing. So how this will be helpful is I've already ran this once, so I can kind of show you what it would look like while this one's running that we see. Let's see, here's create lead. We can see project ops test create lead through exception, project ops test create lead. Unable to click element. Yep, so I can see what line it was on the code, which in our case was 73. So 73 here. Now since I've ran this, I've added some tracing, so it might be off, but it's essentially this open sub area, as you can see. So it's telling us exactly where that's happening. With the standard output, you can see I have my debug trace, which is my debugging here. I'm saying log in, saying open cells lead. I also added some attachments. So remember taking screenshots. We have pictures. We also have recordings. Only if you're doing headless mode for Visual Studio could you add that in the test settings, the run settings file, excuse me. You can capture a recording of this. Now for the image, you can simply click on it and you can see that it opens it up and shows what it looked like. So this is me running it behind the scenes. So when the test is running, I'm actually running this in headless mode, which would be something like this here. Let me get this out of the way. So in our test settings, let me dock these for a minute. Okay. So in our test settings, you can set headless to true, which is what I'm doing. So it's actually running now here in the background, and so on. So you can actually see, I think it looks like it's already run. So the same thing, I can capture the picture, screen capture. This whole run here will be included in sort of a test log that we can use, right? So you can work with the test context page to really understand what values you can add. So if I want to set, or where the results directory is, all that kind of stuff. So in here, I believe if I go to my unit test and go to test results, I should be able to see some of the image, the screen capture the TRMX file. You can, if you run it through command line, we can get the TRX file with the logging, so you can store that if you need it. But this is nice because I can have these for all of my tests, so I can have screenshots if there's any failures and be able to go into each one. So you can see I had multiple failures here. I'm going to close this one for a second. I had multiple failures here. So bookable resource, you know, what did it run into? It ran into this issue here. I can, you know, click here quickly and see what happened. Some element click intercepted it, right? So log in, there was some issue. But because I set these values, I could quickly see the screen capture, add in pictures, that kind of thing. So this one let me kind of see what's going on with it. In this case, the error here I already know is I don't have project ops on this this one here, so it doesn't have any way of like clicking on that one. But each one of these, I could see the red ones, right? So if I had any successful ones, I could show the successful ones here with green, show ones that didn't run here, right? So these didn't run, that's part of this. I have my, you know, failed ones that have run here. So I'll have all of that. I can save any of these here. I can add them to test cases. If I'm logged in, I can actually add to a test case that would be in Azure. I can store this, etc. here. So this gives you a lot of flexibility of being able to run this locally. All right. So at this point, you've seen how to pull down easy test locally, how to build playlists and run them, and then review the results. So if you do have any other questions or thoughts on this, please do not hesitate to add a comment at the bottom. If you did find this informative, please give me a like and to subscribe, and I look forward to further demos and discussions. Thank you. So just want to give a big thank you for making it all the way through the video. I hope it's been helpful. Again, give me any feedback you have, and I look forward to the further sessions we'll have together. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye.